This topic, I used to run a training provider, and this funding, some of it, not all of it, but some of it is linked to putting people on training courses. But I will explain that to you. It's not that onerous actually compared to what you get. So it is our area of expertise. We realised when we started claiming it that a lot of people actually didn't understand how to do it. We're claiming it for a good chunk of our employees. And I know, putting my business owner's hat on for a minute, it is an interesting feeling to know that you've got 12 months of wage security, if you like, that half your wages for your people is covered for 12 months. And it puts your head back in that space of being able to think about what else you're going to do to grow your business, rather than, thinking about how you're going to manage your cash flow as much. So what's in it for us is that at the end of the session, I'm going to make sure that I show you enough in this that you can go away and do this yourself. There's plenty of this to go around. We don't need to do this for everybody, but if you want to, at the end, you can get us to help you, and we will show you how you can do that on a sort of no win, no fee kind of basis. And the other thing that has really got annoyed is that the big companies are claiming this all. So typically, in these things, I'll show you the numbers in a minute. As soon as the government comes out with any kind of funding, the big companies that are well resourced all come out and grab all the money, and then us little guys kind of look around later and go, oh, what happened to that? So we're on a bit of a mission to make sure that some of the small businesses get our share as well, your share. So let me just give you a little bit of the background. So rewind back a couple of years, nearly now, a year and a half. JobKeeper was coming to an end, and for those of you that claimed JobKeeper, I mean, it was great, it kept businesses alive, but there were flaws in it, weren't there? So one of them was that at the beginning of JobKeeper, if you remember, especially for people in like hospitality and retail that had lots of casuals, you had to pay them all like $1,500 a fortnight for about 6 weeks before the government actually reimbursed you anything. So that was a pretty nerve-wracking time for a lot of the companies that we work with. And then also people were getting paid for not working, and there was no value added in the end. It kept businesses afloat in a holding pattern, but it didn't really add any value. So it was definitely worth doing, but it was put together in a hurry, so there were some flaws in it. So October, just over a year ago, October 2020, it's funny, isn't it? It seems like a lifetime ago. Federal government announced that they were going to do a wage subsidy for 100,000 training places. It was $2.8 billion. And what is interesting about that is that everybody assumed that it was for tradies, as in tradies with a D, as opposed to training with an N. And even now, when the government talks about it, they talk about how many tradies they're training. But this training place wage subsidy, which is the first one we're going to talk about today, but there are a couple of others that are important, can be anybody that you put on an accredited course that is approved on a couple of the different lists that there are floating around. So it could be a leadership and management diploma. It could be one of your senior managers. It could be a 17-year-old doing certificate 2 in retail. But these can be online courses that are done, persons working full-time and they're studying, a couple of hours a week. This is not about putting necessarily just apprentices through trades. And I will show you an example in a moment. But if you've got questions about that, please pop them in the chat and I will clarify, because people immediately hear about this and go, oh, no, I know about that scheme and it's just for apprentices. And it's like, no, it is not. We have got hundreds of people signed up to this doing business administration courses, digital marketing courses, real estate courses, leadership courses, plus all the traditional trade stuff as well, of course. So what happened though when they brought it out? Like we were just saying, 70,000 of those places got taken up before the end of October by big companies, because when they opened it up initially, it was for anybody, new workers, existing workers, it didn't matter. So like happened for those of you that are as old as me and remember traineeships from like 20 years ago, the big companies just put their entire workforces on this and took all the money. So that kind of disappeared in a hurry. And so 3 weeks later, they tightened up the criteria and said, right, if you have existing workers, you can only sign them up for the wage subsidy if they're eligible for certain courses. And most of those were like skills shortage area courses. And I will tell you in a moment what they are, but it was things like all the traditional trades, of course, and chefing, but it also was things like dog grooming, cybersecurity, some IT courses, workplace health and safety. So things where there were skills gaps, you could put your existing staff on it. Otherwise, they wanted to redirect most of this funding to new hires. But I will explain to you in a moment the definition of a new hire, because it is broader than you probably think. Is this making sense so far? Please tell me if it is, or if I'm going too quickly or too slowly. So, okay, thank you. So by May last year, there had been 130,000 places of the 100,000, I don't know how that works, that had been used. So federal budget was made last year, and so it was working, and so they uncapped it in the federal budget last year and said, right, we're going to make 170,000 more places, so put an extra $2.7 billion into this. And they said that they would extend the deadline for starting, because that deadline was last year, to March this year, like 6 weeks away, basically. So we are nearly at the end of this program. There's no suggestion at the moment that they will extend it. There's some people speculating that they might give it another 90 days to get past the election, because it has been very good for jobs. It has created 220,000 new jobs so far. So whether they want to stop that at this time might be a bit of a risk. But because everybody went a bit nuts on it, then in November just gone, then they tightened up the criteria for existing workers a bit more and said, you can't go putting your beauty therapist on a cybersecurity course. Like, there's got to be a relationship between what job the person has and whether you're putting them on a course. So it is designed to get legitimate upskilling and training. It's not just a divvy up of money. However, there are some other ones that are just chucking out money, which I will tell you about as well. So I saw some statistics last week from the latest report. There, 27.1% of all of the employers in Australia have now got at least one worker on this program. Which is interesting, because when we started talking about it, we started emailing people about it probably in the middle of last year. We were looking at industries like when we wrote to you guys and went, this industry would definitely benefit. I know you would have people that are eligible based on the courses. And we used to get people writing back to us going, yeah, this is spam, you're trying to steal our money. And it's like, no, we're just trying to write to you and say, there's free money from the government, do you want it? But it's changed over those few months that people have cottoned on now and people are claiming it, which is great. So let me tell you what it is, and it's called, and this is where people go, oh, no, it's called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements, but it is not about apprenticeships in the way that we would think of apprenticeships. So it does include apprenticeships, as in plumbers, but it also includes anybody that you sign on to what they call a traineeship, which is basically an accredited course over a 12-month period, online, part-time, whatever, that is related to their job. So like I said, you could have a senior manager with a PhD in something or other, and you could put them on a diploma of leadership and management with an approved provider, and that would still qualify. So if you sign your people up for this, you get reimbursed up to 50% of their wages over 12 months. And the up to 50% is because it's capped at $7,000 per quarter that they pay you. So if you're paying a person more than $14,000 a quarter, so more than $56,000 a year, you just get $7,000 every quarter. If you're paying them less than that, you just get 50% of what you're paying them. People get quite confused with that. Hopefully I explained that a bit clearer this time than I did last time. So for my people who are getting $56,000 or more, I get $7,000 for each of them in the bank account every quarter at the end of the quarter. Now, be aware that this is not going to solve any immediate cash flow problems, because like JobKeeper, it's paid afterwards. So you pay them and then the government reimburses you. And for this one, you get reimbursed every 3 months, not every 1 month. So as long as you can get through that quarter, you're okay. But don't think that this is going to solve, if you've got immediate cash flow problems over the next few weeks, it won't solve that. But it is still a really good scheme. Now, as I said, it's pretty much all of your new workers, and I will explain why in a minute, what new means. But some of your existing staff will be eligible for it as well. The only condition is that they enrol in an eligible qualification. And I will show you what those are in a moment. Now, this is what's interesting. You can claim, this is a federal government subsidy, a Commonwealth one. You can claim this in combination with the state wage subsidies, the ones that are still running, and there are some that are going that are not COVID related, which I'll explain. And you can claim up to 100% of the person's wages, depending on where you are. You can get 50% from this federal government, and you can get a chunk from the state government as well. I'll show you some numbers in a minute. There's just a little bit of government letterhead to show you that it's really a thing. That came out last year when they extended it in the May budget and said that they're extending it until 31st of March 2022. Now, just bear in mind though, although this thing runs, you can sign them up till the 31st of March, but you will get 12 months worth of funding from when you sign them up. So funding doesn't stop then. However, there is a government funded agency in between us and the end of the process, and we have to use them to do the sign-ups. And they, as you can imagine, are insanely busy. They've had 220,000 employees signed up so far. Speaking to them yesterday, they've got about a 4-week waiting period at the moment to get someone signed up. I'm sure that will increase over the next couple of weeks as we get closer and closer to the time, but we're finding that our numbers have suddenly gone up. And so the rule right now, and unlikely to change, is that if they're not signed up with the ASIN, they're called, by the end of March, they won't be in. Like, you can't just have them booked in, they've got to be signed and done. So we are now in the, what's the date today? 10th of February. I reckon we have got 2 weeks at the most probably to get people through and signed up to be sure that we're eligible. So this is not a thing to take too much time to think about, really. Okay, so yeah, it's a win. I mean, one of the things that's really good about this scheme, in my opinion, is that obviously government benefits. If they can run around in an election year and say we've created 220,000 new jobs, that's great for the politicians. But it is also really good for the economy because it kills two birds with one stone. It keeps people employed and gets people employed, but it also upskills the workforce, which is critically important, especially at the moment when we can't just go and buy somebody off the shelf with the skills without the skilled migration that we had for a while. It's great for employers because we get money and we get skilled workers, and it's really good for employees. Like if you're trying to get somebody to stick around, putting them on a training program for a year that they get a nationally recognised qualification at the end of that year or more, then that is well worth it for them as well. Now, actually, something that I haven't got in these slides, but just also worth knowing, if the course that you put them on is longer than a year, so 12 months you get 50% wage subsidy. Say it's a 2-year course, you get 10% wage subsidy in the second year. And if it's 3 years, you get another 5% in the third year. So there is extra money at the tail end of this, which we haven't even really bothered to talk about because there's so much money at the front end. So eligibility is probably important. Any employers, now you will remember, for those of you that are involved with JobKeeper, if your business had headquarters outside of Australia, then you weren't eligible for JobKeeper, or if you were under or over a certain size, you weren't eligible for JobKeeper. None of those rules apply to this. So you can be any employer other than a state or federal government department. You can be funded by a state or federal government department, but you just can't be the department itself. And that you can be a charity, you can be a business, you can be a sports club, you can be a local council, anything except for an actual government department. Any location across Australia, we've got people signed up in every state and territory now. Any type of industry, so it's not just limited to the skills shortage industries. You can put someone on a certificate 3 in business administration or something if you want to. Any business size. So if you're a sole trader, obviously you can't put yourself on because they're supposed to be doing on-the-job training, but you could hire somebody and put them on. So it doesn't have to be a particular structure of business or anything like that. Full-time staff or part-time staff, I will explain that in a moment, and I'll talk about casuals because it's quite an opportunity if you've got a lot of casuals. And Australian citizens are eligible. New Zealand citizens who have been in Australia for more than 6 months, you can probably tell by my vow that I'm one of those, are eligible. And anybody who's got a visa that's got a P in front of it that they will eventually be eligible for permanent residency, they are also eligible. So visas with a date and end date, not eligible, but visas that are open-ended, they are. And that includes your professionals, your PhD. I mean, we've got a lot of people putting like engineers on a diploma of project management, for example, or architects on a diploma of project management. It doesn't have to be kids, and most of them aren't kids, and it doesn't have to be people who don't have formal qualifications. That's another difference between this and a lot of the previous schemes, where previously you only got money if they had no qualifications already. But here, as long as they don't have exactly the same qualification that you're signing them into, then you're still eligible. Now, feel free to pop some questions in the chat if you like, because I will pause for breath, I promise. Let me just show you, while you're thinking about any questions, let me just show you some dollars, because, you know, can't help it. So I did a couple of quick little calculations. If you are going to put, say, 5 people on this program, then potentially you'll get $140,000 back from the government over the next 12 months. In the worst case, if you had to pay full fees for the courses, and I'll show you in a moment how you probably aren't going to have to do that, but if you did have to pay every course fee in full and got no other rebates from anyone, you're still going to come out with over $100,000 at the end of the 12 months. Now, if you have somebody in New South Wales who's new, you won't pay anything at all in fees. And if you've got in the construction industry or civil, anything like that, you'll pay next to nothing in fees. And then some states have heavy subsidies as well for the courses. So we've got a question here from Peggy. Can you apply for Cpa Study? So Peggy, you could have somebody doing like a certificate for in bookkeeping or a diploma in accounting in most states. Every state, of course, as we've learned, has different rules. You can't do a degree. It's got to be something between a certificate 2 and an advanced diploma. But what we're finding that a lot of people are doing in that situation, like say you've got somebody who's already qualified as an accountant and you want to put them through the CPA stuff, you might find that you either could put them on a diploma of business or something like that, that's still going to be useful to them, but not directly accounting stuff, and then use the funding, the $28,000, to pay for some of their CPA study. So we've seen that a lot with industries that are regulated and licensed. So like real estate agents, for example, one of the rules in this program, there's lots of rules, is that your funding stops when they finish their course. So if it's a 12-month course, but they finish it early after 6 months, then you don't get any more funding. So you want them to take the whole 12 months to do their course. If you are someone like a real estate agent and you want to put them through a real estate license, that is on the list of approved courses. But the problem is you want them to finish it really quickly because they're no use to you until they're qualified so they can be licensed. So what a lot of real estate agents are doing are putting people on a business course of some sort and then using that funding to pay for the other real estate license, which they can then do really quickly. Now we have a couple of questions. Let me just come back to these. So you also mentioned that some existing employees can qualify for this. Which ones are these? I'll show you a slide in a second, Lena, with some of the existing employee courses, and I'll tell you how to find out what the rest of them are. Wendy, our team of boat drivers and coach drivers, and identifying the majority with Torres Strait Islanders. We have difficulty in getting and keeping staff. What are the options of upskilling to boat and coach licenses? Quite a few options there, actually. Wendy, are you in Queensland? I'm kind of guessing that you might be, or in the Northern Territory. Do you just want to tell me where you are? Because if you're in Queensland, there's a couple of buckets of money that you could access. There's the 50% wage subsidy for training them, but you could also probably get another $20,000 per person from the state. So you could potentially get $48,000 per person over the year. And there are, I know we looked at it for someone else the other day, there are some coach license qualifications which are included in this program, depending on where you are. Samantha, are you able to share a list of courses? Yes, I certainly will. No problem. Glenn, what are the eligible qualifications list? I'll show you some examples in a second on the slides, but then we'll make sure that we show you. The thing with the qualifications too is that each state has got different rules. I'll explain to you how you figure it out in a moment, because that's probably the messiest part. You'd think it would be the simplest, but it's not. Okay, so Wendy, if you're in Queensland, then yeah, you could potentially get 28,000 from the federal government and 20 from the state government. So if you're not already claiming both of those, let us know and we can point you in the right direction for that one if you want some help with that. I did a little calculation actually of an example in Victoria, which is a bit similar to what we were just talking about in Queensland. So let me clarify that because I probably didn't explain that very thoroughly. If you are, every state, as we said, different rules, yay. If you are in Victoria, here's some of the funding you can get. Say you were to hire a new employee, 45-year-old woman, increased your staff numbers. Say you had one employee and you hired one more, and she was female, 45, and you were hiring her to work in your office. Now, all of those things are relevant to the funding, and it's obviously different for different criteria. And say you put her on a $56,000 salary, just for the sake of making the maths easy, you would get over the 12 months from, you put her on a Certificate 3 in Office Administration, some sort of course like that. Over the 12 months, you would get $28,000 from the federal government. Then you should get another $20,000 from the state government, because the Victorian government is throwing money at you every time you hire a new person at the moment. And then potentially another $4,000 from the state government related to her training if she's doing something that's qualification higher than what she's already got. So that means that you're getting $52,000 over that 12 months for your person that's on $56,000. So she's basically going to cost you $4,000 plus, superannuation and that sort of thing. So it's a really good opportunity to actually put some people on and actually try some things that you wouldn't have normally tried and cost you next to nothing. So question from Cheryl, would this apply to maternity leave placements or fixed contract placements? Yes, remarkably, as long as the duration of their contract is the same or longer as the duration of the course that you're putting them on. So you could put someone on a 12-month contract and do a Certificate 3 or a Certificate 4. You could put them on a 6-month contract and do a Certificate 2 in most cases. So yes, if you had someone filling in for someone on leave, or you just wanted to hire someone for 12 months, that is absolutely allowed. Question from Avi, there is a lot of shortage of getting staff there, is saying, how can we hire and then upskill them in trades like vehicle, accessories fitter, auto, electrical, refrigeration, mechanics? Well, the good thing is that those courses, I think all of those, are actually ones where, whether they're new staff or existing staff, you'll get paid the wage subsidy for doing it. So a couple of things you could do. You could use the $28,000 subsidy to take your existing staff that you may have labourers or something and put them through this course, and you'll get 50% wage subsidy in year 1, 10% in year 2, 5% in year 3. Or it may give you a little bit more money so that you can be competitive. So when you're trying to hire somebody, you could pay them a slightly higher hourly rate, because under this scheme, if you're paying them $28 an hour for the first 12 months, they're only costing you $14 an hour. So you could potentially pay them, $35 an hour, and they're only going to cost you 21 if my maths is right, and still better off. So it's worth thinking about using this creatively to help solve this skills shortage, staff shortage kind of area. Good question from Glenn, actually, Glenn. Does this mean, do I have to hire a no qualification employee and put her in an admin course to claim this? The only bit that she would have to have no qualifications for is the extra $4,000 for the state government. So in my Victorian example, you would still get $48,000 if she had previous qualifications, but you'd get $52,000 if she didn't. So it's really doesn't matter. It's just a tiny bit of extra money. Well, funny that we're saying 4,000 is tiny, but you know what I mean. So no, you could hire somebody with a PhD in that Victorian example, and you'd still be getting $48,000 from the governments. You just wouldn't get 52. Good question, Felicia. Can the director of business employ someone related to him and claim the subsidy? Right now, yes, the director of the business could do that. That is something that they haven't actually made a rule against. And in fact, there's a rule that says you can. For the state funding, you've got to declare that you're related, but that's okay. You're still allowed to claim it. They just want to know. But for the federal government, they don't seem to be bothered about that at the moment. I guess it's still creating jobs as far as they're concerned. Good question from Wendy. What happens if the staff don't complete the course? You get paid the wage subsidy as long as they are doing it. And then if they stop, the wage subsidy stops. So you don't have to pay it back unless you're doing something dodgy and signing them all up, but they're never doing any study, and then you get found out that you were just trying to scam the system or something. But if you're genuinely trying to put them on the course and they can't finish it, or they fail or whatever, that's okay. You won't have to pay back, but it will stop when they stop. Or if they leave you with early, then the wage subsidy stops then too. I've got a few interesting stats that I just wanted to show you just quickly. So 60% of the people that are signed up so far across the country are not in traditional trades. So it's not just plumbers. 40% are in small businesses. Yay, that's not how it started, but that's how it's turning out. 20% are over 35. I think the oldest, am I to say, the most mature employee that we have got on this program is 63 years old, I think. Construction, of course, has grabbed a lot of it as they do, but the skills shortage, if you look at these numbers, this was recently, I had a look on Seek, 250,000 jobs being advertised on Seek, 100,000 of those are in hospitality, and it's just gone up and up. Seek said it's a record number of jobs they've ever had advertised. So you're either going to have to hire people without all the skills and upskill them like we used to have to back in the olden days, or you're going to have to do something to get the people, whether it's paying a bit more. So if you've got this extra money from your wage subsidy, you could use it, even if you don't use it to increase your hourly rate, you could use it to increase the perks and things like that. So it is just a little bit of opportunity. Having a bit of extra money does give you more options in terms of getting staff, but also if you've got somebody, like say you wanted an office person who could also manage your social media and things like that, you might hire someone with office experience and then put them on a business course that teaches them social media and digital marketing and things. So there's some things that there is a significant skills shortage area where you may be able to use this as an opportunity to upgrade the skills of the people that you hire and get someone with the right attitude and train for the gaps. Who is responsible for paying the course fees? It's different in different states, Glenn. Generally, most states, there's an expectation that the employer will contribute. We're paying the course fees for our people because I'm thinking I'm getting $28,000. They're getting a qualification, but if they weren't actually coming to you saying, can I do this qualification? To me, it's worth paying it. And course fees will be anything from $0 up to a few $1,000s, depending on what the course is and whether you're in a state that does them for free. So I don't know what state are you in, Glenn, I don't remember, but if you're in New South Wales and the employees are new, then things are pretty much free. New South Wales government is providing 100% funding for courses at the moment. Question from Felicia. What if someone is doing full-time study in the uni, is being employed and also doing a course relevant to the job? That's fine, Felicia. They can actually do 2 qualifications at the same time. So they can be doing a uni course or they can be doing some other diploma, and then they can do 1 course under the scheme too. That's allowed, as long as it's not going to be too much. Like there may be an assessment step which says, can this person cope with doing 2 courses at once? But as long as they can cope with that, you could just spread out this course for over a long period of time. So that's not too hard for them. I see you're in Victoria, then. Yeah, you probably will have to pay, you'll get a subsidy for the course, but you will have to pay something. Up to you whether you or the employee is paying, but it's probably going to make it easier and quicker to pay for it yourself, I would think. What we do though is we make sure that if we're managing this for you, we refer you to training providers who don't, because there's a question probably behind that question, which is, what if I go and pay for the course fees and then I don't get the wage subsidy? So we make sure that we refer you to training providers where you don't have to pay anything until your wage subsidy has been approved. And a lot of them actually, you don't pay the full fees until you've got your first payment of the wage subsidy, because the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where you've paid for the course and then you don't get the wage subsidy. So if we manage it for you, we'll make sure you don't get into that situation. Here's a question from right now. Practice manager in the dental industry, huge skills shortage. It's insane. I think, is there anybody in this chat who hasn't got a skills shortage in their industry? I'd be really interested to know if you are. Training is non-existent. The cost, my biggest, people who want to take up training become dental assistant. Advertising on Seek only gives me 200 odd applicants who are on the dole, not interested in a job. I think in terms of getting genuine applicants, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? Maybe we'll do a webinar one day on how to get people. We have found, and we don't do recruiting for people at the moment, we've done it for some clients in the past, but right now we're just too busy doing this, that we have found a lot of it is in the way that you put your ad together. If I was going to give one piece of advice to people, and you will get all the ones who are applying because they're on the dole and they have to, but you've got to be able to filter those quite quickly. So set up a couple of filters in your Seek ad so that you can not have to spend time reviewing those whole 200. But also when you're advertising, a couple of years ago, you could run an ad saying, I'm a retail business and I want someone who's got these qualities, and you could rattle off all the qualities that you wanted. Now I would suggest if you're going to do a job ad, you actually lead with the whole what's in it for them. You say, are you looking for a job that will do that, where you can do this, this, and this, where you can use your skills in this and this? So write it about them, what's in it for them, rather than about you as the organisation, which is what people have traditionally done. What was Samantha's note? Nope, you don't have a skills shortage, or nope, you are not one of the ones that doesn't, assuming that you've got one as well. Oh, Cheryl, so right now Cheryl's put a message to you if you want to take a note of that. Yeah, it's really hard as an employer at the moment. But interestingly, I wrote an ad for ourselves the other day and I got 200 quite good quality applicants. But I did what I just said. I really made it as, are you looking for an employer who will recognise this and this, and where you'll get to use these skills? So some of it's in the language, but some of it is just we are short of people. We've got fewer people than we have jobs for them to do right now. Cheryl, right now, if you would like to get in touch with Cheryl, if you guys don't swap emails there, message us and we can link you guys up if you like. So question from Glenn, and then I'll come back to it. Just want to clear, can I hire an unqualified person in a different industry background and put him onto some certificate relevant to hospitality industry and claim this wage subsidy? Yes, as long as the job that he is doing is relevant to the certificate that you're putting him on. So say, Glenn, what business are you in? Say you're a restaurant. If you wanted to hire a plumber and train them as a chef, that is fine, as long as he is learning to be a chef when he's working for you, he's not still being a plumber. If that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, let me know, because I want to clarify that for people. Wendy, how long does it take to know that you've got approval for the grants for staff on certain courses? On the day that you get the sign up, you will know whether you're eligible and you get approval. So the agency that the government funds to do the sign up has delegated authority to say, yes, it's approved or not. Now, you will forget this, everybody I know, because everyone always does, but what you'll find is the agency does all that, and then you'll probably get an email a month later from the state government going, oh, it seems you're not eligible for the incentives, and then everybody freaks out and rings us. But incentives are different from wage subsidies. What they're telling you is you're not eligible for something that you hadn't already even applied for, but you'll still get the wage subsidy. Anyway, that will make more sense when you get it. But if you get it, just remember that bit and give us a call. Fast food, yep. So then you can hire someone from anywhere, and as long as they're working in the related role to the course that you're doing, that is fine. You can definitely go hire a plumber and put them through a hospitality or a cooking course or something like that. That's no problem at all. Okay, let me show some opportunities that we've been doing ourselves and that some other people are doing. We're nearly at the end. I won't take too much more of your time. So the new worker thing, which I said I would clarify for you, it actually can be backdated for 90 days. So anybody that you have hired full-time, and I'll explain part-time and casual in a moment, but if you've hired a full-timer to work for you, think about this now, since the middle of November last year, then you can sign them up retrospectively. You'll start the wage subsidy now, but you've got 90 days to do this. So we just did a quick calculation. 90 days back from today, being today's whatever, the 10th of Feb, is the 13th of November. So if you hired someone on the 13th of November, their eligibility expires today. So please ring us up and tell us, and because you don't have to have them fully signed up within the 90 days, you have to have the request into the agency. So basically, if you have any employees that you hired in November last year at all, and you want us to help at the end of this, can you please let us know today? Because our queue for doing this at the moment is about 8 days when I looked this morning. So I don't want anybody to have somebody who's almost at their 90 days and miss out. Please, please, please listen to that. So if you hired anybody in November last year, let us know straight away. If you hired them in December or January or the last couple of weeks, that is fine. We'll get them through in time. But anyone in November, we just need to bring them to the top of the pile so that you don't miss out. Question from Felicia, is a migration agency eligible to claim a subsidy? Yes, Felicia, as long as your staff are on a permanent resident type visa. So one of the ones with the P beside it on the list. Yes, you could have lawyers, and then you could be training them in, I don't know, business. We'd have to have a look for you and see what eligible courses there are, because it's got to be relevant to their job, but there's probably some admin or record keeping kind of courses that they could do. So the other definition of a new worker, this is also worth paying close attention to, is anybody that you have hired part-time in the last 12 months. So basically since February last year, if they've been working for you part-time, they're still counted as a new worker, and you don't have to upgrade them to full-time or anything. You can leave them as part-time. So that's something we hadn't really touched on. This does not have to be full-time. If you've got a part-time employee doing 2 days a week, 3 days a week for you, most states have a minimum requirement of 13 to 15 hours to be considered a part-timer, averaged over the month. So they might do 2 days one week, 3 days the other week, whatever, that's fine. Some of the courses require people to be doing 21 hours a week, because it depends on the qual, but generally if someone's doing 2 or 3 days a week for you on average, then you can claim this for them, leave them on part-time, and as long as they started in the last 12 months, then you can still claim the subsidy for them. And the funny thing is, it's not like a pro rata kind of a subsidy. So if they're working 2 days a week, but you're still paying them $56,000 a year for those 2 days, you can still get 50% of that back. Because the way that the process works is you just upload the pay slips every 3 months. They look at the gross pay, divide it in 2, cap it at 7,000 and send you the money. So if you've got highly paid part-timers, then you can still claim. Obviously, if they're not highly paid, you can get it. But it's people go, oh, if they're working 2 days a week, do they only get 2/5 of it? No, you get a whole lot. So anyone that you're planning on hiring before the 30th of March, but please don't call us on the 29th of March, because the queue, as I said, is about 4 weeks long. So it's really, we've got to get this done by the end of this month at the latest. So the next 2 weeks probably. Yeah, which is not long now. Question from Wendy: what about casuals that do the minimum number of hours who've been employed for less than a year? This is one of the things to think about with casuals, and I will explain that, is that whether you'd have to move into part-time, but I will talk to you about that anyway. I will come back to that, Wendy, and make sure if I don't, that you remind me at the end. Brett says, is there an upper limit on salary for the 50% subsidy? It's capped at $7,000 a quarter that they will pay you. So if they're getting paid more than $14,000 a quarter, you'll just get $7,000. So you could be paying them $100,000 a quarter. That's fine. You'll just get $7,000. So that's the funny thing, that it's not only for lowly paid people, it's anybody. It doesn't matter what you're paying them. It's just that they'll only pay you the maximum of $7,000 for every quarter per person. Can an employee working 4 days a week be considered as part-time? Yes. Employees 4 days a week should be fine. We'll check. Actually, before I say that, depends on your state, but that should be fine. If you want to check with us afterwards, we can analyze that for you. Now, here's the thing to think about. So already got them. It's basically a summary of the above in different words. If they're already working for you and they've been full-time for less than 90 days or part-time for less than 12 months, those ones are easy. And the good thing about the reason that the new worker stuff is important is that the list of courses that you can choose from for them and jobs that are eligible is much longer than for existing workers. So pretty much any new employee is going to be eligible for something, less than a CEO. Whereas existing workers, which I'll explain in a second, is much smaller list of stuff that's eligible. That's why I'm emphasizing the new worker thing so much. So casuals, just to come back to, I think Wendy, I think it was your question about casuals. If you have casuals, they're not eligible for the wage subsidy if they stay as casuals. But as you probably know, there are a bunch of rules about casuals, that if casuals have been doing like the same kind of hours for you regularly for over a year and a few other things. I'm not an industrial relations person, I'm a chemist, so don't listen to me. But there are some situations where you might consider them to be a casual, but if they've been permanent casual on the same roster forever, they could come back and say, I'm actually a part-timer now and I want that pay for my holiday pay and my sick pay and all that sort of stuff. So one of the things that you can do, and you may want to consider, is taking your casuals and turning them into part-timers. Now, get good advice about that, obviously, from the industrial relations point of view. But it doesn't matter, they could have been a casual with you for 20 years. And if you want to turn them into part-time or full-time, then you will get a 50% wage subsidy for 12 months. Now, one of the things that some people then say to that is like, yeah, but the casual rate's a higher rate. They won't want to be dropping down to a part-timer rate because it's less. But you may decide to keep them on the same rate because you're going to get 50% of it back, up to $14 an hour, basically it is. So if you're going to get $14 an hour back from the government for every hour you pay your now part-time or formerly casual for, it may be worth leaving them on that same rate. And it just, then you've got to say, well, are they going to last more than a year? If they stay over a year, do you want to keep paying them the rate? There's some things pros and cons to take into account with casuals, but it is definitely an opportunity if you're thinking about making your casuals permanent to make them permanent and get a 50% wage subsidy for the first year. And the same with part-timers. If you upgrade them to full-time, they could have been with you for 10 years and you'll still get a wage subsidy. They could have been a part-timer forever. Now, those last two, you won't get any free courses in New South Wales and you won't get any incentives in other states, which is that email that I was talking about that you might get saying you can't have an incentive, but you still get the wage subsidy. Wage subsidy is different from an incentive. Glenn says, I'm living in Victoria. Do I have to pay full course fees on behalf of my staff member to upskill that person while I'm paying that person's wage? It is up to you, Glenn. You could choose to pay the course fees, which say you get $28,000 back on wage subsidy. You might choose to spend $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is on their course fees, and you're still going to come out with, $23,000 to $27,000 extra. Or you might negotiate with them and say, look, I'm happy to support you to do this course. Victoria has got a funny little rule that if you've put people on this program, you've got to give them 3 hours a week of study time. So you might say, you pay your course fees and I'll give you the study time, or vice versa. When you do the maths though, a lot of people go, I don't want to pay. It's like, actually, you're going to be $20-something thousand better off even if you do pay their course fees in most cases. So most of these courses have some kind of subsidy attached to them. So everybody's going to make a different calculation, but for me, it's like, it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it to make it frictionless for people to enroll, because I'm going to be the one that gets most of the money at the end of it. Okay, let me show you, but if you've got more questions around that, please do ask them, and I'll make sure I answer them at the end of it. A good question, Felicia, is there an age limit? The lower age limit is that they have to have finished year 10 or be 17, I think it is. Different states have different rules about that, but around about that. The higher age limit, no, they can be 95 years old. If you want to put your grandma on, you can, as long as she can study. Let me show you some course examples for new employees, and then I'll talk to you about the specific criteria for all the people that are already working for you full time that don't fall into this list that I'm just showing you now. And then we'll wrap up in a few minutes. So here's just some examples, and there are tons of others. Now, the thing with the courses is that what is messy about the course lists is that each state has got a different list of course fees. And then to make it even more interesting, it's got to be approved in like 3 or 4 different places. So first of all, the federal government has to say, this course is on my list of courses that we will pay a wage subsidy for. Then the state government has to say, this course is something that we will allow you to do as a traineeship. Then the state government has to say, this is the course that not only will we allow you to do, but we'll actually pay funding towards it so that you don't have to pay full fees. And then the state government has to go, and these are the training providers that we're going to approve to deliver it as a funded course. So you've kind of got to look on 4 lists to find the ones that fit you, which is basically the stuff that we do, but you can do it yourself. It's just a bit time consuming. Different states have different rules around part-time to full-time and things like that. Different states have different rules about supervision. So you can't, as you would know, you can't put someone on a plumbing apprenticeship without having someone who's a qualified plumber to supervise them. If you're putting someone on a business diploma, then the chances are that the business owner is going to be acceptable as the supervisor, because if you don't know anything about business, you probably wouldn't be running one. So the supervision rules are different depending on the qualification and the safety risks and all that sort of thing. So that's just a bit of a list of some of the courses that you might consider for new employees, like short-term hospitality and the retail courses obviously are huge. The business admin type courses, there's a certificate for an entrepreneurship in new business, which is actually quite good. It's got some good kind of business strategy, marketing stuff in it. Leadership and management courses for supervisors and leadership and management courses for senior managers. Now, each state, as I said, is different. The Cert 4s, and if you're in WA, for example, Certificate 4s, you've got quite a lot to choose from. The only diploma on the WA list out of these ones is the leadership and management one. But then they've got some advanced diplomas in things like civil construction, supervision and things. So they've all got different lists, depending, I guess, on what the state government thinks is important. Question from Peggy, if the employee attends the course but doesn't pass the course, are they still getting paid from the government? Yeah. So as long as they put in what looks like a reasonable effort. There's no requirement for them to pass. There's just a requirement for them to be engaged and making some progress. So the training providers have an obligation. If your student enrolls and then never speaks to them and never tries and never does anything, they have an obligation to report that, and then they've got to come back to you and say, what do you want to do? Can you get them to do it, or do you want to cancel this? And if you don't do anything about it, then they can report it and have your funding cancelled. So it is important that when you do this, that you get people on it who are willing to make a decent effort at the course. The training providers won't just randomly cancel you for no reason, because this is how they get paid as well. But you do need to stay in communication with them. So here are a few ideas that you might want to think about for your new workers, and then I'll show you some existing workers. To clarify, a question from Heather, to clarify, these subsidies will only work if the employee has been on board since 11/21. Before that, nothing is available. There are some existing worker ones for the ones who started before that, Heather, and I will show you those in a second. They're quite specific to specific industries and courses. If you want to just remind me what industry you're in, and I'll tell you if this is likely to be anything for you guys. So if you've got part-timers, you can make them full-time for 12 months and pretty much pay them the same wages, and then go back to part-time again if you wanted to after the 12 months. You could just give them a fixed-term contract for a year. If you've got casuals, you can make them part-time and possibly halve the wage bill. This is something that we've done. If you're hiring somebody and you can find a second one, this is your opportunity to hire the second one even on a 12-month contract, and it might cost you, it's like 2 for the price of 1 basically, and get some extra projects done. So you know how when you're in a business and you have your big long list of ideas for later, but you just don't have necessarily the time or the money to get on with them. This is an opportunity to do some of those things that have been floating around for a while. Like for us, we launched a podcast because it's like, oh, we can actually have some funding to do this, and it's not such a big risk to the business. So there are all sorts of things you could do with that. The other one, and this particularly applies to you Southern State people, is that you could, there's a special rule in there that says if a person has been away from working for you for 6 months, you hire them back, they count as a new worker. So this whole, you've got all the list, big long list of courses to choose from. So that comes back to your question about if they've been here for since before November last year. So Heather, if you had somebody that left and came back, that would be fine. The other thing that is happening is, say you had somebody that started with you 12 months, started part-time with you, say 14 months ago, and it's only a 12-month period, but then they were stood down for 3 months, you're in hospitality or something like that in Sydney, then most of the agencies that are doing the sign-ups are removing that 3 months from the time and saying, okay, we won't count that. So if you've got somebody who was working for you and it's outside the 90 days or the 12 months time frame, but you were closed down for a while last year, talk to us about that, because we might be able to squeeze them through anyway. Would be interested in digital marketing, leadership, growing succession plan for my business. Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to get some of that training at pretty much, well, at a profit, which is never, I've been in training for 20 years and this has never happened before, and I can't see it ever happening again. Right, existing workers, let me explain this, because this is for everybody else that started with you either full-time before November last year or part-time before the beginning of last year. There's some funny rules about this. So this is straight out of the regulations. The existing worker, which is what they're called, is only eligible to get that payment, which is the wage subsidy, where they meet one of these categories. They need to be doing what they call a trades-based apprenticeship. Now, one would assume, wouldn't one, that when you see the words trades-based apprenticeship, that is plumbing and things like that. But there's actually a 13-page list of what counts as a trades-based apprenticeship. And on the next slide, I'll show you some of them, because it includes things like Certificate 4 in Workplace Health and Safety and Certificate 4 in Cybersecurity and dog grooming and a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is a federal government list of what they consider a trades-based apprenticeship. So it's basically got to be a Certificate 3 or 4 level qualification, and it's got to be a skills shortage area, is what that says in short English. But let me show you some of the things that fall into it, and then let me tell you what you can't do. For anybody who's going, oh, I can put all my people on workplace health and safety. No, you cannot, but I'll explain it. So anybody who's doing any kind of trade, absolutely go for it, take it, because pretty much all the trades are on the list. But as I mentioned, if someone's in an IT kind of a role, you could put them on a cybersecurity course, and they could have been full-time permanent with you forever. So this is for existing employees. First list I showed you was for the new ones. this is the shorter list of what you could get for your existing staff. There's a home sustainability assessment qualification. So if you've got like solar or, I don't know, potentially even fire alarm, what do you call them, smoke alarm people, that sort of stuff, they could possibly do that. If you're in New South Wales and WA, if you've got an office manager, existing worker, you may be able to put them through. It's a business course, but it's focused on environmental sustainability. That course is expiring soon, so we'd have to check whether you can still do it. Now, here's the one where it's been interesting. There's a certificate for workplace health and safety that existing workers can do. So what happened is that certain large organisations who shall not be named but perhaps sell fried chicken decided that every single one of their staff suddenly needed to do a Cert 4 in workplace health and safety for probably reasonable reasons, like there are, you know, in these pandemic times, we've got a lot more safety obligations on us. So they signed up their entire workforce, including all the teenagers on the front counter, at which point the state governments basically mutinied and took a delegation to the federal government and said, this course is not allowed to be on the list because the systems are getting rorted. And so now they've said, they compromised and said, we'll leave this course on the list, but the person actually has to be in a safety related role. So if you've got a person who's an HR person or a safety officer, you know, in some kind of high risk, or you're working in some sort of high risk safety environment, then you could possibly get them through. But certainly safety staff and HR staff, those ones are fine. You can do that, but no more chicken selling people. There's a certificate for in civil construction supervision for civil supervisors that if they're there as existing workers. And then there's a whole bunch of other weird and wonderful, I shouldn't say weird, someone might be on the thing. If you, dog grooming, greenkeeping, chefing, enforcing, those sorts of things. There's a whole, so probably the easiest way to do it is at the end of this, if you decide to get us to help, just tell us who you are and what you do, and we will give you the shorter list rather than you have to wade through it all. That is just an example of the piece of paper that you get when it's approved. You can see sort of halfway down on the left-hand side, it says they're an existing worker, they're in civil construction. They're paying fee for service for that one because they're an existing worker. And so it's a piece of paper that you get. When you get that, you know that your wage subsidy has been approved. Actually the training provider gets it, sorry, and they can send you a copy. Can this also apply from Lena to directors of the business too for the existing employee, and do they need to be full-time or can they also be part-time? That's the question, Lena. Directors are not eligible. So basically, if you are a director or a major shareholder, then you can't claim it. If one of you, say you're a couple, one of you is the director and the other one is not, then that person can be eligible. But if you are the business owner in any kind of format, then no, sorry, that's one. But you could hire somebody and claim it for them. So just before we wrap up, I'm just going to take you through the steps to do the claim. And then what I can do, if you like, is I can send you a copy of this presentation afterwards. So if you do want to do it yourselves, you can work your way through it. That's probably the easiest way. So here's the steps. First step is look at what courses are approved on those 4 lists that I talked about that suit your business and your location, because every state is different and every business, it's got to relate to your business. Think about new staff and skills you might want to have to fill gaps. Think about existing staff, who you want to upskill. Check that they meet those criteria and make sure you've got somebody who can supervise them. By supervising, it's when they're sitting staring at them, but you can't, if you've got someone working all by themselves in the middle of nowhere, you can't put them on a plumbing apprenticeship if there's no plumber to watch them. Find out, check for the other incentives. So Victoria, you get $20,000 or $10,000 depending on which person you hire. If you're taking on an extra person in most cases, that's a very brief summary of it. Obviously, there's more detail. In Queensland, same thing. So for the can't remember your name, sorry, who was talking before about your Torres Strait Island staff. If you are Queensland based and you're not in Brisbane City Council, Gold Coast City Council or Sunshine Coast City Council, so anywhere else in Queensland, you can get up to $20,000 from the Queensland government as well for employing somebody, and that amount varies depending on who they are and what their background is, but there's quite a lot of money in there as well. So check out the state-based stuff as well and figure out which order you have to claim in, because some of them will say you can't claim this if you've already claimed this and vice versa. Choose a training provider. Choose a training provider with funding, preferably. Choose what they call an ASIN, which is the government agency that does the sign up. Organise them to sign up. lodge your wage claim and then make your claim for the other incentives. Probably the most complicated claim to do is the Victorian state one that's got a bunch of papers in it. You've got to do a stat deck and things like that. But this 50% one is actually, once you get to the claiming stage, it's actually not that hard at all. So we can help with most all of that pretty much if you want us to, or you can do it yourself. Now, once you're registered, the easy bit is actually claiming the subsidy. That is really simple. So at the end of the quarter, as an employer, I get a text and an email. Sometimes I don't get the text, sometimes I just get the email. I think they're getting a bit swamped, which is a link to hop in the portal, and I upload all the pay slips for the people that I'm claiming for, fill out a declaration to say, yeah, they still work here, and yeah, they're still engaging in their training. And then usually within 14 days after that, you get the money in your bank. They have been running a little bit behind. So I just got the last payment on Monday for the quarter that ended in December. So as I said at the start, don't count on it for your cash flow, but it will turn up. So Tim's got a question: if the business is based in New South Wales, but you employ staff in Victoria, how does that work? The funding is based on where the staff either live or work. So for example, New South Wales, for the free courses that the government offers, this employee has to either live or work in New South Wales to get that funding. So if the staff are living and working in Victoria, then you would come under the Victorian rules in terms of the Victorian eligibility list for courses as well. A couple of questions that we get all the time. I think we've asked them, what if they don't pass, you still get paid? Am I going to have to do a lot of work to supervise them? No, the training provider will do the training. You've just got to sign off to say yes, that they're competent and all that sort of thing. So just quickly, last bit, if you get us to help, one of the things that's really important to me is to make sure that any of the stuff that we're doing, you are not going to end up out of pocket of this. We want to help you get money off the government, not take money off you. So what we have found with the clients we've worked with is that generally this bureaucracy is not your core business, probably because you are sane. And people are so busy at the moment. Hey, like, you're either busy because business is booming, or you're busy because it's really disastrous, and there's kind of nothing in between at the moment. It's really weird times. So you are very welcome to do this yourself. And I hope that today I have given you enough to be able to do it yourself. I just want to add a but to that though. We keep getting people whose applications get rejected because they've been coded wrong or because they've been given bad advice about how to launch the claim. One of the things that the agencies that do the sign up is they've been hiring hundreds of new staff. James, yes, I will explain the fees for sure. Thank you for reminding me. That's kind of important. Hey? So the agency have been hiring so many staff to do this that they, I mean, they're trying their best, but they don't really know much about it. So they go, oh, no, you can't claim for that person. And then we come back and argue and show them where the rules say that they can. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can. So what I would suggest that you do is you get us to do all the setup. So like if you claim JobKeeper, your accountant would have done, we do all the setup, and then once a quarter you just have to upload your pay slips. So you carry on with your core business. In terms of our fees, once you get approved, we just charge 10% of what you get approved for. So when you get approved, you pay us the 10%. If cash flow is an issue for you, then don't pay us the 10% until you get your first payment. But we do not want you to be out of pocket at all. And then you just carry on doing what you do best, which is presumably not managing all this, and we will keep an eye on the payments, and we will also keep an eye on any other funding that comes up. Like if we go, oh look, New South Wales has just dropped in a bunch of money for people in hospitality, and we'll make sure that you know about that and can claim that as well. So yes, but I just want to emphasize, so our fees are 10% of the amount that you get approved, but if cash flow is a challenge for you, please talk to us, because we will not invoice you until you get that first quarterly payment. If you need us to do that, that is absolutely fine, and we put that in writing. I want people to feel, I want you to feel really confident that you're not going to be out of pocket either with the training provider or with us. Oh, now Rachel has very kindly, thank you Rachel, just dropped into the chat. We have a quiz. So the easiest way to progress this is that we do a pre-assessment. So the first step is that you give us some information and your approval to investigate it for you. You're not obliged to pay us anything at this point. We're just assessing it. But give us the approval that if we do go ahead, that that we will pay, obviously. And we'll do a quick assessment of your eligibility. So that form that Rachel's dropped in there is the information that we need to do the initial pre-assessment. It's really just, how many staff have you got, when did they start, what industry are you in, anything else we need to know. So we can email it to you afterwards, or you can grab it out of the chat, whatever you prefer. And we can then go through that, work out what we think you can get. and we can talk through you on the phone with you or send it back to you, whatever suits you, however your brain works. And after that, we will let you know whether we think there's an opportunity for you. And if it's really simple, like if you've just got a labourer and you want to put them on a plumbing apprenticeship, then we'll just tell you and say, look, you don't need us, just ring this number, call these people, they'll sign it up for you, and you can just do that yourself. But if we look at it and it's more, and we will filter them at the moment because we do have quite a lot in the queue. If it's a more complicated one though, and we know that you're going to be better off to get us to do it, or there's extra funding that you can claim, then we'll tell you that as well. So once we've done that preliminary assessment, we will let you know what the best path forward is for you. Now, we are all working at home, we're at the beach, as I said at the beginning, so if probably the best way to get in touch with us at the moment, you can ring the office, but it will go to voicemail, is you can email Elisa, who is on the email that's on the screen there, elisaw@Strategy, or I think Rachel has put something in the chat. Have you, Rachel? Yes. So once, okay, thank you for reminding us, Rachel. So Rachel's doing all the processing, so she really wants me to remind you of this. Once you have submitted that form, if in the process of submitting it you had anybody who started work for you in November full-time, can you please call or text Elisa? And Rachel has put her number in the chat. It's 0451 733 418. I'll just repeat that if anyone needs it. 0451 733 418. And if you could call or text Elisa on that number, if you had anybody who started working for you full-time in November, like today or maybe tomorrow, then we will make sure that those ones jump to the queue. She also said, could we get a list of the approved courses for the existing workers? Each state has different laws, but if you want to Google Australian government approved traineeships Appendix E, you should get that's the overall federal government list, and then you just need to go to the state lists and see and kind of match them up. It's a little bit fiddly, sorry if that sounds vague, but it's called Appendix E is the name of the document. That will at least give you a start. But Cheryl, you probably just as well, if you want to, is just to do that little quiz that Rachel dropped in the chat, and we can give you the list of a shorter list rather than you have to wade through the whole mess of it yourself. So I think that is it from me. That was longer than 30 minutes. I'm so sorry, and I'm so appreciative that almost everybody stayed to the end. Thank you. I hope that was interesting. Whether you get us to do it or whether you do it yourself, go get the money and go get the training for your people. Don't let all the big chicken people and retailers get it all. I hope it was helpful, and we will email you a copy of this today or tomorrow. I'll just volunteer Anthony to do that so that you can action it. But yeah, do the quiz, let us figure it out for you, and then decide from there whether you want us to do it or whether you want to do something. So thank you, everybody, and have a really good day. And I hope you're not sweltering like I am. See you later. Bye-bye.